guys, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, welcome to my channel. Today's video is going to be my labor and delivery story, and I do have my daughter here. She is eating. So basically we're going to just jump right into the video. We're going to start on the 22nd of June. It was around 2 o'clock when I started to feel contractions. At this time I was 17 years old and pregnant with this little one here. Her name is Willow. So it was 2 o'clock. I was having contractions probably every 10 minutes. They weren't strong at all. They felt like period cramps. I was at my boyfriend's house at the time. So I was having them for a consistent hour, so I decided to go back to my house. We have a pool, so we went swimming, and on the car ride to my house, I was having really bad contractions every 2 minutes, and I was like, okay, so I'm definitely in labor. Whether it's just very early labor or who knows, but I knew I was in labor. We went swimming. That eased the pain quite a bit, but once I got out of the water, my contractions were now 4 to 5 minutes apart, and they were really strong. At this point, I did download a app on my phone to track your contractions with, and that was really helpful. So a few hours later, my contractions were then 2 to 3 minutes apart, very strong, lasting for around a minute long. So we did decide to go and call my doctor and see, well, my midwife. We don't have a doctor, I have a midwife, and to see if I should come in or if I should just wait it out, when I should come in, basically. So, we called my doctor and she told me to rest. She told me to take a bath, to try and just go to sleep. So I did try and do that. My contractions felt like they were a 10, which they weren't a 10 at the time. They were probably like a 7 on the pain scale. But I did decide to go into the hospital about an hour later and to get checked. So by the time we got there, I was checked and I was only 2 centimeters dilated, and I was effaced, but not too much. I think it was like 50% or 40%. So, yeah. So they decided to monitor me for an hour, and my contractions were steady. They were strong, but after that hour, I was not progressing at all. I was not progressing at all. I was still 2 centimeters. And then they decided to send me home at that point. So by the time we got home, it was around 4 a.m. My contractions were so strong. I tried sleeping, but that didn't work. I tried to take a bath. It helped while I was in the bath a lot with the pain, which I would recommend to you guys if you guys are going to have your baby soon. It helps a lot with pain if you just take a bath and try and relax. But when I got out of the bath, it was excruciating. It was literally excruciating. These pains were on a scale 10, and I have felt full labor pains, so I do know what that is. And, hey Munchkin. So I got out of the bath and it was about 6 a.m. at this point, only 2 hours later from getting sent home from the hospital, and I told my boyfriend, I think that we need to go back to the hospital. I think it's time. I couldn't breathe through them. I couldn't talk through contractions. So we left and we ended up getting to the hospital around 8 o'clock in the morning on June 23rd. So, alright guys, so sorry if you hear burping, but she needs to be burped, and we're going to try and finish the story. So, basically I got checked. I thought I would have been like 4 centimeters, and I ended up being 7, almost 8 centimeters dilated. So, we are sitting back, guys. But, so at this point, I was begging for the epidural, but I decided not to get it yet. because I had to be transferred to labor and delivery before I could get the epidural. And I was 8 centimeters, so I was like, maybe I can do it without the epidural. But I was in excruciating pain, contractions one after the other. I had no breaks. I felt terrible. And on our way to the hospital, I thought my water had broke. So when I got there, they did check to see if my water broke, and it did. So yeah, my water did break in the car ride on the way to the hospital. So once we got to labor and delivery, they took my temperature, and I had 103-degree fever. So basically, they gave me drip antibiotics through my IV, and they said that I probably had an infection, and that could spread to the baby, so they wanted to give me IV antibiotics as soon as possible. So they did that, and I was shaking like I was having a seizure, so I couldn't control my body. I was shaking, and then having contractions on top of that. So I asked for the epidural, and it took them probably 45 minutes to give me the epidural. They checked me, and I was 9 centimeters. So I was probably already at a 10 by the time that I got my epidural. But yeah, so 45 minutes after being checked, I was given the epidural. It didn't hurt at all for me. I know some people say it was like the worst part of labor, but for me, it did not hurt at all. And right when I got it, I felt great for like a good half hour. So I am happy that I did go through basically my entire labor without the epidural, except I just didn't do my delivery without it. But, so I did feel, scale 10 contraction pains. So they had me laying on my left side because her heart rate would drop whenever I was on my back or on my right side. Later they found out this was because her cord was around her neck, and in certain positions it will tug on the baby's neck. So it was only on my left side that her heart rate would stay consistent. Basically, this made the epidural only work on my left side of my body, and my right side I could still feel. I did press the button to get another dose of the epidural, but that didn't even do anything. I could still feel everything on my right side. I was checked again about 30 minutes after getting the epidural, and I was 10 centimeters dilated, but my cervix had a small rim on the bottom portion that needed to dilate before I could push. And about 10 minutes after that, my cervix was fully dilated, and I was ready to start pushing. So it took about maybe 5 pushes, and her head was already right there. You could see it. It wasn't crowning yet, but you could see her head and her little head of hair. She had so much more hair than this when she was born. So I was pushing for a total of almost 3 hours before she was actually born. But during this time, her heart rate would drop a lot, and the doctors were really concerned about that. They were trying to get her out as soon as they could because of that. They did want to do the suction thing and suck her out, but by that time, she was already almost out, and Mama's trying to tell you a story. Mama's trying to tell a story. Shh. So, basically by this time, she was already almost out. So, she did do a episiotomy on me, and this was about 2 inches long, and it goes from the end of your vagina, and it goes towards your butthole, basically. But it doesn't go all the way down. So, basically, this did make her come out so much more, and she could kind of guide her head out. So at this point, my epidural had completely worn off. I could pretty much feel everything. I did feel getting cut very, very much. So, alright. Alright guys, so I did end up giving the baby to my mom so that I could finish filming this video for you guys and it would not be so hectic. But, so, I'm not even sure where I was, but we'll just start from where I got my episiotomy. This I completely felt because my epidural had pretty much worn off, and, I felt everything. I could move my legs. I could feel people touching my legs. So yes, my epidural was almost pretty much gone at that point. So also, right when I got back to postpartum, I did walk right away. I walked to the bathroom, and I really didn't have any trouble walking. Only the pain from my episiotomy was the reason why it was hard for me to walk. So once I got my episiotomy done, her heart rate completely stopped. It was at a 0. There was no heart rate at all. Um, and I was pushing for maybe about 10 more pushes, maybe 5 more pushes, and she came out. So I did do a labor and delivery vlog, and I really wanted to get like certain things on camera for that, but because that ended up happening and her heart rate was at a 0, I didn't record anything because I wasn't going to be able to hold her right after she was. So she finally came out, and her cord was around her neck. So they took it out from around her neck. They cut the cord immediately, and they took her away. When she was born, she was not breathing at all. Her heart rate was a 0. She was basically dead. All I remember from this portion was when she came out, I reached for her to put her on my chest, and they cut the cord and took her away from me in a matter of literally 2 seconds. And I was pretty upset, but I was totally out of it at this point. You have an adrenaline rush, and you're on this high almost, and you don't even know what's happening. But so I just remember her. She was so white. She was literally like a sheet of paper. She was so white. She was pale. It was like she had no blood in her body at all. So I didn't hear her for a long time, but I remember hearing her cry probably about a minute after she was born. She was taken into a separate room, but it was right next to me, so I did hear her cry. It took about a minute for them to revive her, and they did have to bag her, so basically assist her with breathing. So I'm not really sure what that kind of a birth is considered, because I know when you give birth to a dead baby, it is considered a stillborn. But she didn't die when she was in my womb. She died when she was in the birth canal, so I'm not sure if it's the same, but she was dead when she was born. My mom and Dalton went into the room that she was in. Dalton was my boyfriend. They went into the room that she was in and cut the cord, and they were the first ones to see her. I did not get to see her for probably a good 5-10 minutes while they were analyzing her and making sure everything was okay. And at this point I was being stitched up, and I could feel that, and it hurt so bad. But I was being stitched up, and they also she had to go in and get my placenta because my placenta would not come out. It could not deliver for some reason. We never really knew why that was, but she did have to reach inside of me and pull my placenta out. And when she did pull it out, it was all weird looking. It was all chopped up, and it looked like literally something attacked it because that's not what it's supposed to look like. So they did end up doing tests on my placenta, but they never said anything was wrong with it, so I think everything was fine. But that could be the reason, or one reason, why I did have an infection. So she sewed me up and was pushing on my stomach to get all the fluid out and all the extra blood out, and just to make sure I was bleeding normally and stuff. And there was a lot of blood coming out of me, but I guess it was normal, but it just felt like so much fluid coming out. And but she never said anything was weird about that or anything like that. They also, I forgot to mention that they did give me a catheter after they gave me my epidural, which was taken out but right before pushing. And they did want to give me another catheter, but I did not want that, so they gave me a bedpan. I did end up going to the bathroom, and they had to push on my bladder to get the rest out, but because I did go on my own, they decided not to straight cath me, which thank God, because I didn't have the epidural anymore, and I know I would have felt that. So yeah, your girl definitely peed because that's not happening. So they brought Willow out of the room and they put her on my chest. She did have a breathing tube, and I will insert a picture somewhere, maybe on the screen. She was born at 6 pounds, 5 ounces, and she was 19 1/4 inches long. At her birth, they actually had the wrong length, but at her 1 week appointment, we got the correct measurements and all that. So she was 19 1/4 inches long, and she was such a little tiny, cute little baby. But I did only get to have her on my chest for 10 seconds. And then she was taken away and brought to the NICU, and I was taken and I was brought to my postpartum room, which was special for people who had their babies in the NICU department. So it was a different kind of room, but I'm glad that I did have that room because it was big, it was spacious. I could have everybody, I could have my whole family in there, but it was very hard because I had to go back and forth from the NICU to see my baby. We were in the hospital for 2.5 days in total, and we were released at the same time. During this time, I was on IV antibiotics the entire time because I did come back positive for having an infection, and they gave Willow, my daughter, her IV antibiotics as well for the first day while they were doing the test to see if she did have the infection. And when the test came back, she was clear, so she was taken off of the IV antibiotics for the second day we were there, and she was on oxygen the second day that we were there because her heart rate was very fluctuating. It would go down really low and then back up. It was super scary to have a NICU baby. I will tell you guys that. It was a very scary experience. And it's something that you don't realize until after and you have your baby home, and it's just, you look back and you're like, wow, that was like such a scary experience. People who have a normal labor and delivery, probably their experience was a lot better than mine, but mine was like traumatizing. Alright guys, that is it for my labor and delivery story. We were then sent home at 2.5 days after being in the hospital, and she was healthy and she was good to go home. So we did go home, and yeah, so it was an awesome experience in total though, because I got a baby out of it and I got my daughter, so I would do it 100 times over. And honestly, I think it was such a beautiful experience, and it's just like the labor and delivery experience was honestly one of the most biggest highlights of my life. Like, it was just amazing. So I would definitely do it again. And yeah, so thank you guys for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.